at 12:40 in the afternoon. This session is just before lunch. But what's important is that the subject basically that we're going to discuss today is supply chain therapy, identifying the pain points in pharma logistics. I know it's a topic which is been close to my heart, and one of the reasons that I'm involved in the pharma supply chain is that there's a lot of amount of pain for all of you to understand in the supply chain. In the past, it's getting better, but there's a long way to go. Now, why are we saying therapy for you all to understand? The word therapy, if you go on to Google and look at the word therapy, it basically means to say that you're not going to use a medicine or anything, but you're going to give a treatment which will result in curing that particular disease or that particular ailment that exists in a particular person. So, is there a way that you can do that even in the supply chain is a question that my fellow panelists and I will be discussing and deliberating during it. But also what we will be doing it is we will be referring to the pre-pandemic situation and the post-pandemic situation, because one needs to understand that prior to the pandemic the situation was very different. During the pandemic we ran through a different pain area, and post the pandemic probably we are hearing different versions of pain. For a simple reason is that there is war situation in certain parts of the world, there is situation in China which is of a different kind. We are still getting to see the Suez Canal type of a situation, capacity is coming back, but also regulations getting tougher in certain markets. We are having issues in terms of the GST coming into play with effect from the 1st of October in respect to air freight and ocean freight. But in the background of all this, what is positive for all of us to know is that the government on the 17th of September also launched the new National Logistics Policy. And the National Logistics Policy came into light after a lot of deliberations, and what that can do, or would it add more value even to the pharma supply chain, is what I will be discussing along with my fellow panelists. I am happy that we have a very good panel in terms of a lady, Ruby, who comes from the service or the freight forwarding side, which is the side that I also have been holding for quite some time. But also we've got Ugrasen, whom I know for quite some time, and we've had many rounds of discussion even in the past when he came into Delhi. Then we've got Gaurav Arora, whom also I know from his previous assignments and thing. Chandan himself comes from a completely different background and not from the traditional thing. His pain areas are very, very different. So what I will do is that the way we have structured our panel discussion for all of you to know is that we will start with the opening remarks to really understand what is individually their pain areas. Followed by, I will do a few questions in terms of understanding how we can address them and what else can we do. We will come with our last closing remarks after we give you a Q&A. So I'll keep it specifically for the 60 minutes that we promised sort of it. So I'll start straight with asking Gaurav to start off in terms of what do you think is your pain point area in the supply chain. Over to you, Gaurav.
Thank you, Satish, and good afternoon, everyone. So with reference to the topic of pain areas for pharmaceutical industry, though I would say pain has been much reduced from last 1 decade. So, but still we are satisfied, but we are very optimistic in terms of a kind of a zero pain or zero breakdown or zero OTIF issues, because most of the buyers who buy material from us, who buy B2B customer of us, has a kind of failure to supply penalties in terms of delays. And we can imagine, because expectations are high. Now pizza is delivering in 30 minutes, and more than a 30 minute, it's a penalty. For pharmaceutical products also in a similar way, the OTIF is a main issue because we have capacity constraints. We don't have much liberty to change the plan and do the capacity in terms of manufacturing. So we have to be very specific on the SLAs of logistics. Now, we have improved in terms of sea cargo, air cargo. There are a lot of professionalism came into the picture in last 1 decade. But I feel in terms of this is a kind of general industry pain points, which I discuss many times with my colleagues and network. Is still the surface cargo, the end point, because either you go by sea cargo or air cargo, there is a significant role of the surface cargo as well to connect those links. And in India, there is still possibility of improvement because ultimately the truck drivers or that kind of area where we need an improvement in terms of more professionalism. I would say there is a significant improvement, but having said that, we have to look and we have to focus more on that surface cargo and the truck driver kind of trainings and their significant importance to understand the cargo's importance. One more pain point in terms of pharmaceutical industries, as the previous panel discussion also touched about that point, is compliances. So there are regulatory compliances because most of the manufacturing industry who are supplying the products to US, they have a different kind of compliances set of requirement. Maybe for Europe, there are a couple of several compliances requirements. In India, if we talk about US, there is one called CT-PAT. So there is a custom trade partnership in terms of terrorism. So do we have such kind of each and every minor micro level of compliances in India? Though as an appreciation, yes, in terms of the national logistic policy which has been recently introduced, at least we have something now to start with. I know the policies are being meant to for betterment of the industry, but the execution is the main important point. So I think there would be more possibility to add on the compliances more strict, more user friendly. When I say strict, it is not for the making the silos or hurdles, but it has to be a kind of helping them on SLAs. And third and not the least is in terms of our internal security, in terms of documentation, in terms of training, in terms of logistic team development. So that's, as a manufacturing industry, need to more focus. We are doing already, but we have to be more focused on those internal resources. So these are the three pain points which I could see. Satish.
Brilliant, Gaurav. So I think you touched upon the trucking aspect which is there. You talked about the regulatory aspect and CTPAT as well. So I think we'll touch base those as we process. So I'll move to Ugrasen point of view, because you also have a big bit of import that you all do, and the pains in import are different from the pains in exports. So probably you can throw some light on those critical points.
Thank you, and very good afternoon to everyone. First, I wanted to congratulate all the partners who we associate with, because without their support, we will not be able to serve the end customer. The motto of Cipla is, caring for life with low-cost quality medicine. And I really wanted to appreciate Mr. Jani for our exports handling at airport, Mr. Manoj Singh for import consignment. The way we synchronized during the COVID, when nobody was on office and on the road, we are able to achieve clearances of our import and export consignment. But yes, despite saying all those things, we have lots of pain area which is really hurting, or which I'm not seeing a substantial growth or development. One point I wanted to highlight here, being pharma is a more compliant, stringent norm, manufacturing and processes. We manufacture goods in a controlled, very professional way. But once my consignment is out for movement, rather for export, import, the kind of treatment that package get is very painful. And we always have that pain or that thing in mind. I don't know when my consignment is get contaminated or temperature exertion will happen. I just wanted to give an example, and this example is not from Indian airport, this example of US airport. So we are into different kind of therapy business. For some regulatory market, we are bound to import the raw material and packaging from the dedicated supplier, and we import empty aluminum tubes from US, and we fill the end product, and again we export it to US. The consignment reaches to US airport, it get clearance from airlines, and before loading into ULD and airplane, TSA people inspect those cargo, and I don't know what problem they have. Every time they put cut on my consignments. And being a pharma consignment, if any biocontamination happening to any of the tube, my entire batch is getting rejected. So for me, the pain is getting the consignment in India with a infestation is wasting of money, time and efforts of everybody. My supplier, airlines, airport, my forwarder, my logistic team, my procurement team. And I'm trying to convey this pain to these kind of forum, but I don't see any development, Satish, where people doesn't understand pharma consignment. Though it is a aluminum bottle, but if it is contaminated, any biocontaminated, this is going for this can be hurt a human life. And pharma has a so stringent policy in terms of biocontamination, we reject entire lot. And this is the pain which I wanted to highlight on this platform also. Guys, please understand pharma business. This is not a regular consignment. Any contamination, any damages to any packaging is going to huge loss, and which is ultimately impacting my patient who want this medicine. This is one point. Another point I wanted to highlight in terms of moving cold chain consignment. If in today's scenario we are talking a lot, if you see on paper, we look so good, fabulous. But ground reality, it's 100% adverse, which is an area which we, as a I invite everybody. We need to look into this, and with the collaboration of everybody, we need to transform those ideas which are looking fabulous on paper on the ground, which will going to help everybody, being a consignee, consignor, airlines, airport, and the forwarder. Thank you.
Thanks, Ugrasen. I think you've touched upon imports, the TSA thing, and the rest of them, which I will come back on what the industry has done to address those, because you made a valid observation in terms of saying is that you speak on these forums, but how does it get to it? I think that's something which I will explain on what as India you can do, not in individual capacity, but there are organizations which are taking it up. So now let me move to Ruby from a standpoint of what pain that from a service point, because in the last session I saw one of the service providers raising her pain points out of it. Probably you want to throw some light on it.
Yeah, of course. So good afternoon, everyone. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a great forum where we can actually discuss what went better, what we can do. So 2 years into the pandemic, and the supply chain spluttered, broke down, we had choked airports, we had capacity issues. But yeah, we did a great job, and actually what happened was a transformed supply chain came out, and we have a great foundation right now to actually build on innovation, which probably took 2 decades, but now happened in 2 years. So, so one of the more, critical pain points is not from my, just a service provider, but pharmaceuticals generally save life, improves the quality of our lives as well. So we're all consumers, but the customers, Cipla, Glenmark, everyone actually have to deliver those drugs across the world. So I feel that from our perspective of a supply chain, we are in a baton race, a relay race, where we have to pass on those baton. But with pharmaceuticals, that baton is very fragile. So there are a lot of integration which takes place. And everyone, so from a service provider point of view, my company is actually a vertical, and we've done a lot of innovations, bought in technology for better visibility, more analytics. But what is happening is we come into the picture of only a pickup point to a delivery point. There's more to the supply chain before the pickup, which is planning. So what goes wrong is one problem at the planning stage actually ruins the whole supplier. There are freights not reaching the airports on a timely basis, and this is where we need a problem is integration, and we need an integrated platform. And that platform actually can help all those people who are working in silos to come together so that, yeah, temperature controlled cargo has to reach on time. So, capacity, yeah, we are getting capacity, we are getting those trainings, but those loopholes of temperature excursion, someone said in the previous forum, that, yeah, temperature excursions happens at the tarmac. There are congestion. There are some airports who do not have a storage facility. So these, and of course, technology, digitization, we're going a long way in it, but actually the execution needs more fine-tuning, more spearheading. We still see, and being a service provider, we get claims, we get complaints from customers. Even today, ladies and gentlemen, in the 21st century, systems are not working sometimes. There's a failure of connecting shipments, the details, the delivery part, the trucking part. So all of that actually alleviates the problem and the pain points. And we are right now, we're being the devil's advocate, bringing out the pain points, but these pain points have to be actually addressed to the stakeholders, not just the government, but everyone, to probably get this moving from right now being 6% of your exports of generic medicines to a better target of 20%, 30%, 40%. So that would be all.
Thanks, Ruby. So for all of us to understand, we've come a long way in terms of the pain, like someone said. So if someone has ever visited a Hyderabad airport 20 years ago, the blue drums used to be kicked from the truck and they would roll on a tire, and no one would realize that that's the way the pharma was dealt with it. From that to getting to pharma zones in the country, I think we've come a long way. All our major airports have pharma zones. People are at least having conferences to sort of discuss these subjects, which I think is good. So I'll go to Chandan now, because Chandan comes from a completely different angle where it's not size, it is not thing, but comes from a different pain point. So over to you, Chandan.
Thank you. Thank you, Satish, and welcome to all co-panelists and the audience here, and thank you for having me here. See, I represent a CRO CDMO industry, so it's a part of pharmaceutical industry, but not so significant. So usually gets lost into the various decision makings and discussions. But with all the global changes or dynamics which are happening, let me tell you, Indian CRO CDMO industry is getting its own share of value in the global market. People are looking at Indian CRO CDMO industry to play the role which today most of our global players, competitors are doing that. Now we can be competitive only if there is a sufficient ecosystem, and that is going to benefit all of us. Now if I have to talk about how this CRO CDMO industry suffers or struggles in the bigger scheme of things. Example, we have certain restricted products. They are classified basis HSN code. You do get the material on the port, you plug in the HSN code. Now, it does not differentiate basis the volume B which is being imported. Now, CRO, CDMO industry operates at the lab scale and to a plant scale, but for the preclinical requirements. So, they are not typical bulk shipments, container loads and all. So, if I am importing a 5 gram of a HSN code which is restricted or under controlled circumstances, not having a exemption or a faster route to do it always derails the whole process. This industry operates on speed, everything, because we are much before the commercial manufacturing or launch of that product. We are at a stage where it's in the discovery stage, where it's in the lab. People are doing their research, target finding, how it can be done faster. At that time, if we are not able to serve the purpose, people are going to move out. And then that's how the further industry. So if you are doing a drug substance manufacturing at a particular region, then the drug product manufacturing preferably can also happen in that region. Likewise, if you are doing a preclinical analysis or development at a particular region, anybody would like to see how it can move to the later stage. And CROs and CDMOs of earlier were offering only the basic chemistry services. Today, world is looking at the integrated services. So where we are doing lab, we are doing preclinical, we are doing the clinical part of it, and then handing it over, and if definitely some customer is interested, we can always go till the commercialization. So this is an industry which operates under the umbrella of pharma, but never gets its due. So pain points, if I have to speak about speed, one thing which I was sharing with our co-panelists prior to this session is, during pandemic, the interpretation of speed has changed totally.
Correct.
Today, if earlier the speed was X, people today think speed is 10X. People have talked about vaccines can come in 1 year, and buildings in China, 2,000 bed hospital can get built up in 6 months, and here you are taking for raw material to take another 4 weeks and 6 weeks. How are we going to match it? So people's expectations are much higher, and in a B2B industry or service industry, it just gets amplified. So if I have to specify certain pain points, one of the pain points is how we can have harmonization of various regulatory requirements and some categorization or classification depending on the end use or the volume which is being imported. That can be very helpful, especially for the industries which are in these niche areas. You buy some deuterated compounds, some animal, say hepatocytes or enzymes. You can't make them go through the same channel of scrutiny which if you are doing at a commercial scale. Second challenge which we are facing a lot, we are dependent a lot on the air transport mechanism. 85% of CRO, CDMO industry operates with the DHLs and FedEx of the world, and maybe another 15% with the air cargo system. Very few will be dependent on the sea transport or surface transport. Most of the customers are abroad on the western side of the globe, and most of our raw material supplies are on the eastern side of the globe. So we are somebody who is acting as a channel in between. We are dependent on China and all for the raw materials and the specialized materials, and then we do our necessary services and submit the material to the western side. The routing of the air shipments. Now, if I have to just give you an example, if I have to move some shipment by FedEx from Hyderabad, I have to move it by surface, or they will come and pick it up, move it by road to Bangalore. From Bangalore, it will move to Mumbai, from Mumbai to Dubai, from Dubai to Shanghai, and then to Japan. Say it's my shipment which has to go to Japan. From China, it goes in 2 days to Japan. So how I am going to attract a business of my competitor based in China if I am going to take 6 days and say from China it is going in 2 days. So routing is very critical for us. And in this industry, timelines are counted in days. They don't count in months or weeks. So that's the challenge. Third is the valuation and assessment. Most of the materials which we import and export, they are not commercialized material. They are not well-developed material. They are at a very early stage of the research and development. So the process is not stabilized. Nobody knows what is the fate of that material. Assessing it, valuing it, and declaring the value becomes a real challenge. And many times we get material from client where they don't disclose the exact composition. They just tell us what we are supposed to do. And then if I ask them more detail just to arrive at a valuation becomes slightly challenging. So that's the second pain point which we face mostly on the valuation and assessment, just due to lack of commercial availability or a stabilized process. And third one is, we are seeing a lot of digitalization happening across various systems. A lot of it has helped, whether it is at the customs processes or various regulatory controls in India. One thing which we definitely want to acknowledge and appreciate is how it has improved the efficiency. The bill of entry filing online and all is definitely helping. But we also need to be sensitive about the agility. Is it also adding on to agility or restricting the agility? Can we create all the permutation combinations and simulations so that it addresses all the requirements or otherwise you keep some exceptions. If you insist to follow certain process, then it will derail or roadblock certain requirements. So these are my three major pain points. So thank you, Satish. Over to you.
Thanks, Chandan. So having got the pain points now, starting from Gaurav to Ugrasen to Ruby to Chandan, let me give you all a quick insight on what's been happening over the last couple of years as far as all these points are concerned. One, in respect to value and assessment, Chandan, which you touched upon, I think it's up to the industry also to raise this with the customs and Chandan. And a classic example that I can speak about is the mobile industry was facing a massive problem in this country many years ago. If you come from a station called Hyderabad, where you'll never see a mobile import. And I'll tell you, whereas you'll see 90% of your mobiles in the country land in Delhi. Because in Delhi, what they've done is they've literally created a center where the mobile assessment happens. 45 minutes from the time the shipment comes in, there's a gateway, and in Sarojini Nagar, you'll find the mobile phone today. I think that's something which the pharma industry should be really looking at, is that you need to get this to the authorities, one, to get your valuations and turnaround time, especially for the small shipments that you were talking about. You touched upon the aspect of 10x speed, and I'm not surprised because someone said, how do you select a partner and the rest of them? Would you select a Blinkit today over someone else for a delivery today? If people in Delhi know, you sit in your house, you press a button, 9 minutes, for heaven's sake, we don't know, is the guy flying and coming into your house, and before you even walk out of your bedroom, he rings your bell. I think speed is that part of it. Two, also you touched upon the aspect of the way the approvals are being given now for your new medicines in the country. Today, if you study an engineering course in any Indian university, whether it's IIT or B.Tech in anywhere, you invariably have to do a 4 year course, then only you will be told in April you will be able to get your degree. But for some of you who need to know, if you are studying in a Penn State University in Philadelphia or in any of the US university, you can study maths, computer, and even a third degree if you are capable, and pass out in 3.5 years. Because the current generation are faster in their thinking process than what it used to be many, many years. So I think the thought process also in the legislations have to change regularly, and that's something which I think as associations we will have to take up and tell them that, look, boss, what we did 30 years ago is not what we will need this point of it. But to Gaurav's point, before I ask you all the next question, is that I think trucking is going through a massive, massive change, Gaurav, just to tell you. Control towers are being established. Truckers are monitored now on the number of kilometers they're supposed to do. Also, truckers have their pain points. There's no trucker sitting here, but when I interact with truckers, they say, we go to offload the cargo, but they don't load it. Who's hearing to my pain point? Because when I go to Ugrasen's factory on a Friday, the guy is saying my warehouse is shut only Monday morning. So now you have technology which can tell you how long the truck waited at your place. Ruby may say, "Mera driver to wait kar raha hai." I think tech part is also something which you guys have touched upon. So I think we've got a whole lot of pain points, but the positive thing that can come out of the whole thing is all are addressable in the days to come. It's just that I think we need to see how we can, as a team, address them. But I'll go now to Gaurav back. Now that you've told your pain points and I've given you a little more insight, what would be one thing that you think should be addressed immediately? In sense, you have 3-4 pain points, but today if you say, if my car is broken down, my flat tire has to be fixed, that's your priority. Today, what is that is stopping you really to get your growth up? Because you're addressing the pain point only to increase efficiency, bring in more productivity, and then get your business up to a larger scale. If you're going to wait for 9 days, what is that one thing that you think you should be expecting out of anyone, whether government, service providers, anyone? What is that one thing that you want?
Yeah, good point, because maybe industry to industry or client to client, the priorities can be differ.
Yeah.
But in a larger scale for the pharmaceutical industry, the most priority point to be addressed in terms of the government policies. So like national logistic policy has been introduced, but the execution and the other side way of the NLP to make it success, because if you see, I'm not saying that India is only a kind of sufferer to that, but you have seen the Swiss Canal issue. You have seen the even though in India, a lot of time you see Nava Sheva issue, we are not saying we are bad, but in terms of there are a lot of improvement is to be immediately addressed. However, government has taken the step to introduce the policy, but the execution has to be very fast. And in terms of execution, it has to be in a planned way, which can, resolve those kind of SLH issues or CFS issues or stocking issues. Now, coming back, because bulk drug is also a kind of going to be a very, very important pharmaceutical contributor to the country revenue, because most of the bulk drug parks are now already introduced, and bulk drug companies has to have performed their deliveries in time. And because if you are mitigating the procurement risk from China, and if you are showing to the world that yes, you are a second, maybe the first option to them in next 5-10 years for the bulk drug supplier, you have to have a kind of sea freight or sea cargo issues to be resolved immediately. You have to scale up all your capability and agility in terms of sea cargo in 10x time within a 2-3 years, because we don't have time. So this is the first thing which I could see has to be immediately addressed.
No, brilliant. So I'll answer on that point of it in terms of the legislation execution. At least glad India took the final step, because for all of you to understand, if you are a freight forwarder today like Ruby and me, they said, to which department do you belong? He said, na Garka, na Gatka. They said, why? He said, Ministry of Civil Aviation disowns us. Ministry of Finance only remembers us when the duty has to be collected. Ministry of Shipping says, tu kon hai? You are not the owner of the cargo, you are not the owner of the container. So we were disowned for the time. We got independence, but I think the freight forwarders never got their independence, honestly. It's only now that the government finally thought that we are important post the COVID situation, that we got some bit of now recognition, and that's how the logistics policy considers as some part that we are useful people. And for some of you who know and who would understand, 30 years ago, a freight forwarder getting married was like a miracle. No one would give us a girl also, because they karte kya, dabba utate ho. Now the things have changed, which is a good thing. We are able to wear suits, sit in 5-star hotels and talk on platforms today. So the good part is that Ugrasen himself acknowledged that his service providers have contributed. Ugrasen, thank you so much, because most of us in the logistics industry went through even lathi charges during the COVID time.
Yes.
So if you ask me my pain point, there are of a different kind, which I will explain. But I think one, I should compliment the industry for recognizing it. But from your standpoint, apart from the import constraint, because that is something which is in the US, which I may not be able to immediately address it, but what would be one big ticket item like what Gaurav mentioned, the legislation aspect, for you that we should be looking at?
So for freight forwarder and airlines, I'll say bring back the cost to the pre-COVID level.
Okay.
So Sanjay, we have a very, as you know, Cipla is known for low-cost medicine, and we are more into, NGO kind of, support we give. And we have asked from management to, bring down the cost, because we don't want to pass these pain to the, our end customer. So for airlines and freight forwarder industry, I will love to see the, pre-COVID price level. For the customs, they had did tremendous in terms of, processes and everything, but still there is a lag in terms of, everybody know the faceless assessment. If my bill of entry goes for faceless assessment, somebody is sitting in Sikkim, and it took me 5 to 6 days to identify the person who is going to assess my bill of entry. There is no information, nothing is, given on the custom portal. They have number, they have everything, but nobody picks the number, nobody respond to the email. So these two things, what I see, on a priority basis.
Good. Ruby, you would probably come in a different angle, is that ठीक है, cost तो कम कर देंगे, payment कब आएगी हमें? ठीक है. So what would be one dream wish for you as being in the industry before you probably look at some other industry?
Okay. So, no, I wouldn't say, payments and all these are very small things when we actually take a step back and look at, what we were able to do. So what we from the service provider would want is the industry to grow, the exports to grow. So that, and how will that grow is, of course, better visibility, more technology, and, and that is how the industry will grow. Freight forwarders will ultimately grow with those volumes.
Absolutely.
So of course, that's not my problem of when the payment would come in. And but yeah, of course, one thing I would like everyone who's asking for a low price is that pharma is a little different from the other supply chain. General commodity, auto parts, you have a lot of consequential, it needs to go into a temperature control, like you said, it gets contaminated and you lose the value of the product. So here, saving on some smaller costs and paying a lot of money on the consequential problems would be, I would say, a bad idea. The thing is that once the infrastructure and there are more pharma parks, there are more transportation, and then the scale grows so that the cost ultimately goes down. And that's how, and then we will be able to buy service from, TK is here, Qatar is here. So all of that capacity comes at a cost. And we would be able to deliver more service with a premium cost so that you save not just 10, 20 cents of freight, but, tens of thousands of dollars on your product going to the new markets and going to the end consumer, and you can, get your magnitude of money from there. So, it would be like you can let go of that penny and earn a pound.
No, great. So you really nicely put it across is that the size of the cake needs to increase, which basically means that you said, Ugrasen, you can come in.
I just have a small point for Ruby. One, in terms of visibility, yes, we are working, towards the visibility. I just wanted to give a small example what we are doing. So we are, developing, on the verge of developing by 1st November, we are going to launch that platform, wherein a punch, PO is getting punched in system, and in a 30 minutes time, you will be get intimated that Cipla has punched this PO with this delivery date. So those kind of visibility, yes, require for planning to you, to airlines and everybody. And we understand that pain, and we are working very, strongly towards those points. So which will be a very good thing. A PO is getting punched by my buyer in my plant or my factory, and in 30 minutes time, you're getting an email intimation that Cipla require 1 ton of material from US by end of this month. Number two, the pricing part. See, pharma is not good to go things. It is must. And we cannot, go and say, customer, boss, I will say this, sell this for 100 rupees. If you have price, buy it or leave it. No, we cannot do this. And that's why we want your association, airlines, freight forwarder, all the partners related, how we can bring down the logistic costs so medicine can be reached to each and everybody who, in a need of medicine. That's it. Thank you.
So let me add to what you said, Ugrasen, and what Ruby said is that cost reduction is a factor of many things, and it's not just one part of it. And Ruby touched upon the aspect of compliance and sort of it. When you start training your staff today, you want to do a pharma aero course, you want to do a GDP certification, it comes at a huge price. Now a call that the pharma companies also need to take is that, do you see value when you hire these partners who have these certifications? One is, these are not glorified certification, because every 2 years you have to still pay. If you need to do an IATA certification today, $90,000 is what you have to spend. So I'm just reminding everyone in this forum and rest of them, is the airlines go for IATA certification today. They have experts sitting sort of it. So the pharma companies should actually tell, do you see value one in that, because that's a cost which I have to factor in. But like one of the previous panel, someone raised the question is that if you're going to work on Ariba platform, the Ariba platform doesn't identify whether you are GDP certified or not. Now, do you have a mechanism for that is a question that we should be really asking, because if you want one point that I raised and which you nicely said is that you're coming with a platform. Is I was speaking in Abu Dhabi in one of the conference and I said, can the pharma companies promise on this platform that you will give me a forecast which is 90% accurate. I'm not asking about 99% because you want your medicine to go 99% guarantee. Will you be able to give? He says, no, I can't give you a forecast. I said, but how many years you want your forecast to be fixed? Because your demand planning is all, your SNOPs and rest of the subjects that you discuss are all about getting your forecast right. I said, today when you have technology, you have historical data, why can't we sit together and get the forecast right? One. Two, I think what is important, and when I come to Chandan, I'll talk about it. When can we get our trust factor between partners increase? Because today, a lady who goes into a kitty party in Delhi has a higher trust factor than people sitting in the supply chain discussions. This is a reality. And if we can't fix this and get the trust factor higher, because today when I buy your medicine, it's a white color capsule, I consume it, drink this water, and believe that tomorrow I would not have my temperature of 104 will come down. When a forwarder tells you or your partner tells you, for heaven's sake, let's start trusting our partners, so this is right for you, then I think your cost will come down drastically because he knows something better than someone else, and which is why he's in that business and you're in that business. I think that's one other observation that I've been telling people is that you want your cost down, tell your partner, let's find ways. We're not going to use pallets from tomorrow, let's move to slip sheets. Instead of putting it in a 40 feet, can we get into a 40 feet high cube, get 3 levels of stacking, get our package thickness increased by a certain amount of GSM so that it doesn't shrink down. I think those are areas where I'm very pro, and just to tell you, we've set up our first innovation center in Hyderabad for supply chain, and we've partnered with University of Birmingham and Central University of Hyderabad as this new step. How do we really innovate to maintain the cold chain? Because if someone doesn't get the universities involved, then I don't think the costs are going to come down. And government is also dreaming very big without understanding where from the cost comes in. And I think for all of you to understand also is that 85% of the industry is not educated. That is a staggering number. There are very few MBAs who've actually studied supply chain. They would have done some bit of supply chain and they're here by accident, because forwarders have come by accident, not by choice. So this is the reality. Sorry, Chandan. So probably one last thing before I give it to the house to speak. Maybe what is your priority now? Getting your small shipments out fast?
Yeah, so the priorities, we deal with too many departments, some under national control, some under state control. We are talking about national single window system, ULIP and all. Maybe an effective solution to it where a shipment comes and everything can happen in a very integrated manner. Whichever department has to give the assessment or approval should happen digitally with some time-bound SLA and with some practical approach. It cannot be driven by theory. So that's the highest priority, because that is one thing which I feel will really help me achieving that speed which we are talking about.
Great. One of the research that was done is that today to get your shipment out from the country, you enter the same data 17 times. I may be wrong in terms of that the number could be lesser, could be higher, but not lesser. Because from the time you raise your purchase order to the time it reaches your destination, including a gate pass plus your trucker's invoice and the rest of them. I was glad that even Manoj was there at the logistics policy launch in Delhi. The government understands and the Prime Minister understands that this is a big pain point. The PMO's office incidentally tracks your IP address, if you all did know, on which officer's file actually the file is sitting now. So that's a good development in terms of it. But I know the faceless assessment has been a pain area. So maybe before I get to your closing remarks, I will leave the floor open for questions to the esteemed panelists, and then we'll do sort of it. I see one hand straight away going up, which is a good sign. That means he's not hungry. Can we have the mic to the gentleman here, please?
Thanks, Raju, for wonderful conduction of this, panel discussion. So you mentioned about, people in logistics not having a formal MBA. Fortunately, I did my formal MBA from NITI, that is notorious institute for torturing innocent engineers. It is actually National Institute of Industrial Engineering. So that is one. Second thing, you also discuss about pharma companies not paying vendors on time or delayed payments. That is because we are on the wrong side of the payment receipt system. If you are arranging doctor conferences, we from the pharma industry will pay you advance, right? Because that's where our money comes from.
Correct.
Right? That is one thing. Second thing, you're talking about, multiple data entry. The same data has to be entered into multiple times in multiple systems. This problem will get solved if we have a blockchain policy implemented. Blockchain, you know that once the data is entered, it cannot be altered. It will get into all the systems, the same data, and it can reduce down international logistics documentation cost by almost $150 per shipping consignment. That's a huge saving, plus on the labor, but also a huge saving on the cost. So thank you.
So just to answer your point, why does someone needs to get paid on time? If you are paying $12,000 for a container and you're paying $10 to Brazil, I don't have the working capital to increase it 3 times. So one, people to understand, I will have to borrow that money from the bank and I will have to factor in that into my cost. Because the topic that was given to this panel and the content that was built is that how do you overall bring down your cost. So cost is not one component, in which I clarified to all of you is that in your partnership, it should be a win-win situation. It can't be a win-lose situation. Because ultimately when you kill your partner at some point of time, he's out of business. And second is, if you want to implement blockchain in the coming days, it's a cost. I'm ready to implement blockchain tomorrow. But I'm asking this house and the panelists here, are you ready to pay that price? Because end of the day, you want a business class seat, it comes at 4.5 lakhs if you want to go to Washington, DC. If you want to reduce your cost, you will fly in economy, which comes with other benefits. So blockchain comes with a cost, and if the blockchain is ready to be implemented, I think we are already ready in terms of 200 people put in our tech center in Chennai already working on blockchain. So you made a very valid point. I'm happy that blockchain has come up as a discussion. Ugrasen should be happy if at some point of time in the next conference we have a used case study on blockchain really to be presented. We've incidentally presented it in Hyderabad in one of the conferences recently that I hosted, which is done with Dr. Reddy's with the Central University of Hyderabad as a used case already. So I think things are coming, and so thank you for raising those 3 important points. There's Manoj.
Thank you, Satish. We're talking about the cost. Who is the monitor of monitoring this cost? Because there are multiple supply chain players out here. How the cost should be evaluated? What is the ideal cost? Who's going to identify that this is the benchmark, this needs to be done, and this needs to be really monitored? Now, everyone works into their cost element, but when it goes into total, it gets into a logistic cost very expensive. So be it on the airport side or supply chain, distribution, transportations to airline freight. Of course, everyone says the airline freights or the freight shipping line contributes to 90% of the cost factor, and rest elements are minuscule. But going forward, I think it's very, very important for all of us to understand if the cost is the most important element, cost is based on service also. There could be a service of a supply chain player giving end-to-end solutions. The cost factor will be identified. But the pharma industry has to understand that what should be the ideal cost and where their benchmark should be, and that's where there is a big question mark where exactly we should really stop our numbers. So how do we address this?
No, I'll tell you how you need to address it. Put your balance sheets on the table. Straight away. I'm ready to put my balance sheet on the table and ask the pharma companies, you put your balance sheet, are you making more money? I'm making more money. I think that is the transparency and trust I'm talking about in this country. One of the lady last week in the US said, don't I have a right to see the US balance sheet, because the government has a right to ask me how much tax I'm paying, but if my tax is paid for war in Afghanistan, I have a pretty well right today to ask my partner boss, if my wife will expect me to say, where are you spending your money? If I'm your partner, then I'm ready to share my cost. What is my rent? What is my salaries? What is my transportation cost, CSR to the airlines? I'm absolutely ready. But I'm asking pharma companies and the service partners is, if you have a cost, tell me it's a cost. I don't think that is that is the whole reason is everyone is only saying it's a wish. And first thing is whoever is telling, including the government, that the GDP is a comparison. First thing, your GDP comparison to cost is wrong. For heaven's sake, how can you compare a GDP of India to a GDP of US? So understand that I think when people are speaking, governments are speaking, they need to get their facts right straight away. If they don't get that facts right, it becomes a problem. Because if I'm operating out of Mumbai in South Bombay, my cost is different versus operating out of Srikakulam in Andhra Pradesh. My salary structure and minimum wages in each of the states are so different. Legislations are so different in each of the states. Overtime charges are different. How do you address Baddi's union issue? Pharma companies are based there. I can't send my truck even if I want to send it. So I think, Manoj, it's a very valid point is that we need to do an used case study. I'm happy to be a part of that study and saying, look, here are my costs, have a look at it, because there's nothing that, the way the freight forwarding industry or the supply chain works is on 4 fundamentals for all of you to understand. The first fundamental is you have origin cost, then you have the main carrier cost, and then you have the destination cost. That's it. So if delivery order and the rest of them are one component, it goes to the airport or some particular person. My margin is visible because I have to show it somewhere. I'm in business sort of it. So good you raised this point. And I'm happy that
I'm just adding here, because this is a very important element, because this drives the business where we move the goods from which modes of transportation, by air or by sea, correct? So we are here speaking on the air cargo industry. But yes, I spoke in the earlier panel about the cost factor. The cost factor makes the decision for the pharma shippers to move the cargo to the other mode of transportation. So there are ways and means to really curtail that, but it has to be very, very objectively defined. And that's why we have to work together. Logistic cost is very high in India, is a very subjective matter, and it's not been addressed in the right spirit. And we have to really address everything into different channels and then see whether there is a level where we lose our customer. Agar Indian shippers are losing customers based on the global players, then there is a serious element of identification. We have to audit that. But every cost factor has a different parameters of service and the cost, as you rightly mentioned. But we need to have our own benchmark that this is the way which should be and not beyond that. But everyone has to work together on that line.
So I will make some controversial statements, so I expect some kind of tolerance from everyone. Supply chain activity doesn't add any value to the product. Okay, supply chain activity, I'm not talking about supply chain department, I'm telling supply chain activity or transportation activity doesn't add any value to the product. Okay. Our product is made when it is manufactured, sealed and packed in the pharma industry, you know, and it is utilized when someone takes the tablet or takes the injection or vaccine, whatever. So companies will spend minimum amount of money just to maintain that value inside the product. So Manoj, coming to your question, what is the benchmark? Ideally for a pharma company, benchmark will be 0. You know, I would like to have, you know, at 0 cost, maintain my, value in the product and ship it to my customer. But it is not possible. So we have to start from bottom of how much less can I spend? So the pressure on cost will always be on supply chain departments and logistics department and the service providers. Okay, what is adding value to the product is R&D, marketing, where we realize the value. So pharma companies will spend a lot of money on R&D, manufacturing, because that's where value creation happens, and marketing, where the value is realized. So we'll have to brace ourselves to think innovatively, how do we maintain the product value and still, at the lowest possible cost.
I'll answer that, in fact, if it's a question. So, yeah, of course, it's a very controversial statement saying that supply chain doesn't add value. And after 2 years of pandemic, when you saw that we came actually out in the forefront, I feel supply chain is that thread, actually, which is weaving a whole fabric and getting the trade connected. So, and of course, we understand, and, as Manoj said, the cost, he's right. We are actually focusing on just the logistic cost. And where, I wanted to put this point across was that, there's a lot of leakage across the end-to-end supply chain, which if we work on the infrastructure, the connectivity, the training, the packaging, might go down. So then you as the pharma company will be able to actually pay more for a premium service to get more out of your medicines across the market. And second, I of course, from the customer's perspective, I understand. What does everyone want? They want a cheaper medicine. That's what I also want. But cheaper medicine cannot only come with reducing the freight cost and the handling cost and the duty cost. It can be done, and that's why we are here sitting and talking about technological advancements. There are in US, Novartis and Pfizer are actually using artificial intelligence to actually produce a lot of effect, which might, yes, of course, these are innovations, which might reduce the costs as well or provide more value to the patient here again. So, again, this is all of us, and we are all in alignment, and we understand the pressure, but we have to also align on the leakages, and that's where the cost will come. How many times do we only negotiate on freight rates and get a benefit? I am sure, everyone is wise enough to understand that that's a very small component. Let's work on the scale, economy of scale, where, we're doing 6%. Not that, I feel it's still a great number looking at where we are coming from. But yeah, we should have an ambitious target. And we would be there, with Mr. Jani said, we have the people strength, we have the technology, we are, we outsourcing IT, and now, supply chain as well. So, I hope I was able to, let you and clarify on that no, supply chain is not a zero value.
Food for thought, because I do work on RFQs and I do work on costing. I'll be very happy if there an RFQ comes and it's for 1 year or maybe even more. But the fact that are we even looking into current affairs? The fact that we are talking about people going in recession now. Europe has been impacted already. That's what I've heard. US going into recession next, then impacting rest of the world. India, people say maybe we will be, because we are mixed economy, there are people who are rich, they are poor, so we somehow manage, and more or less, we are farming here and we are farming here and we are the consumers here. So maybe we'll sail through. But I've recently seen even organizations changing their models in terms of, there were rates which were floated, we were giving rates on a monthly basis. Now clients are changing to 3 months, going on to maybe a year and year and a half. Are we really prepared for it? I think just a food for thought, leaving you guys. As I said, I'll be very happy if there's an RFQ coming my way and I won the business for a year. But will I be able to really serve it? Will you be able to get services out of me? I just leave that thought to you guys.
Okay, so let me quickly answer that for you in terms of understanding, is that RFQ coming 12 times is a cost. Because managing a cost for Ugrasen or Chandan or for Gaurav itself is a cost, because please understand, getting the RFQ, getting the spreadsheets, getting you to travel, getting into negotiations is a cost. So if you ask me, every bit of that cost has to be assessed. You are happy to get your RFQ, but you are also a cost component in that organization. You say, what are you doing? You're saying, I'm filling Excel sheets. So I think what we need to understand is that if there are certain charges which can be kept for 1 year, for example, your origin charges and destination charges can be finalized and your trucking cost can be finalized with a factor of 2 or 3% fuel variation, you can run your business. It's just that during the pandemic you had these challenges, which is why they went on to whatever there. But if I can ask Ugrasen, does he like every day to send the RFQ to 20 forwarders? No. I know I deal with large pharma companies, and trust me, there are a lot of wonderful people in the other side of the table who have partnered and don't get on a daily basis. Once you get the power of attorney in the US, you become their partner. So I think partnerships have to be built, trust has to be built, Manoj's point of collaboration has to be built. Once you get into a collaboration and only focus on service, you will demand a price. But if you focus on price and cost and killing your partner, you will never get nowhere, you will not grow your business. I think this is a fundamental of any strong businesses that have grown. A classic case for you in this country is Tata's. Do they focus? You go to a Taj hotel today, you get a different feeling over going into some other hotel. Why does that happen? Because they care for their people, there is empathy, there is sympathy, there is caringness, and if you can do that, that employee will be higher productive than being part. If you give your partner more, he will give you more. And I think that's how the cost aspect can actually come down, and that's the food for thought that I want to leave this house for you all to think over, is that do we care for our partners? You know, because I meet my partners on a regular basis. I go and take them out for lunch and dinner. They say we feel nice when a trucker is called and you are sitting with him and having food with him on a dining table and not saying you are always late. I think this is a food for thought that all of us should carry. And probably a last thought I will start with is, Gaurav, your last thoughts on this subject, because the screen
so
says
only
time
30,
of
30
sorry.
seconds. Yeah, so coming back to your question, which is relatively perfect to that closing remarks. In terms of cost, as a manufacturing industry customer, we love to have a kind of long-term association as a forward hedging in terms of long-term contracts for the cost. But problem is, any freight forwarder or you being a service industry cannot commit in a long term because of uncertainty. Most of the Indian pharmaceutical company is still first week of month, shipments are that level. And after 20th and last week of the month, it will be like this. So it's a simple demand versus supply kind of thing. So you have to have a kind of long-term contract, but there is something improvement area required from the customer side as well to plan better in terms of the entire month level planning for the logistics. So maybe coming to the RFQ point, cost is important. However, coming to Manoj's answer also in terms of Satish, if you allow me, it cannot be every case open balance sheet, because if your cost to Bangalore to Korea maybe X dollar, to the company who is having EBITDA of 40% will be $1,000, but a company who is having an EBITDA of 10%, you will not reduce $500, right? So if I share my balance sheet, it cannot be your costing in terms of sharing the balance sheet. But yes, in some cases when we have a long-term partnership, it helps. Thank
Brilliant.
you.
No, good thing. I'm happy that I'm provoking the thought, so there's no other intention whatsoever. So over to you, Ugrasen.
No, yeah, many thanks for answering the question,
Thank you.
and that too in depth. Really appreciate it. So yeah,
Manoj-
that's all
Manoj
from
wants
my
the
side.
mic.
I think somebody said in the earlier panel was that not only in terms of airport and then handling offices, and then we need to look within as an organization also, that we are not working in silos. I think it goes with partnering also. I think we need not to work in silos. When it's a concern, I think I need to reach out to you. You have a concern, you reach out to us. And I think even I'm slightly old-fashioned, so maybe implementations. I know these days you have tools and you have errors. You just punch in and say, okay, this was the error, and done and over. But when you're actually sitting in a QBR or an MBR with the client right in front there with your management, you cannot lie. You have to be there. So as I said, I've been here for quite some time, so I understand little bit of systems, a little bit of how it's been previously. So thanks for listening. And
Manoj, you had something before I go to Ugrasen, because
I think most of the point has been covered. I was thinking of asking Cipla, what's their supply chain cost compared to the product. You were saying the value is there. So supply chain cost, do you think pre-COVID and post-COVID you reduce the cost, you're happy, or you're happy with the service that you paid more to the clients, to your all supply chain player, including the airport?
So Manoj, it's all depend on the situation. This is a longer subject. Yes, we can discuss on this.
offline.
We can discuss.
But
this
one thing is very clear, Ugrasen, and we have not slept for last 2 years. We worked very hard at Mumbai airport. Many challenges, vaccination, these guys have done a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Manoj. Thank you. So I will keep it very short. I started my career in 1997 with at a trainee level, and I see a fantastic progress in this logistic industry. And I'm very optimistic with such kind of platform, such kind of people, yes, we can achieve the ask. This is what my, conclusion. Thank you, Singh.
Ruby, a quick, rapid
Yeah,
three-letter word.
Just, just one sentence, that someone said this from Pfizer, is that the impossibles can be made possible. And this sentiment would be true for the pharmaceutical industry in India. And they have done a good job. And of course, there are changes, there are challenges, which I'm sure, with the NLP and with the collaboration, I'm sure we can overcome that and come out strong.
Great.
Thank you.
Chandan.
Yeah, quick. I think right steps have been taken. It's just some planning, some prioritization, some commitment, and little more patience. We will all achieve that. We all are working. We have improved a lot as compared to last decade and earlier times. So there is a way forward, and we all can achieve it. That's it.
Great. I think you'll have to give a big round of applause to my panelists first.